So today's lesson is called Solving Equations by Multiplying or Dividing. So by the end of today's lesson, you'll be able to solve equations using two different properties of equality that we'll be learning today. Now, don't write this down. You already have in your notes, but we're going to go over it one more time. So the rules for transforming an equation. First off, your goal. Your goal is always to get your variable on one side of the equation. Either side doesn't matter, but you have to get the variable all by itself. So I don't want to see a 2x. That's wrong. It has to be an x all by itself. No 2 plus x, wrong. Or x minus 3, wrong. X has to be completely by itself. Then, our other rule. Whatever you do to one side, you must do to the other. You must share it equally. And our third rule. To undo an operation, you have to perform its opposite. We're going opposite. Remember I told you we're going backwards of PEMDAS. So, how do we do the opposite operation? So if you're adding or positive, what's the opposite? It's a negative. What's the opposite of a negative subtraction? It's a positive. What's the opposite of multiplication? It's division. And what's the opposite of division? It is multiplication. Make sure you do the opposites. Now don't worry about the middle. All I want is the multiplication property of equality as well as this sentence. Whatever you multiply by one side, you must multiply by on the other side. So the same type of idea happened with yesterday's addition and subtraction property of equality. We have two values. They're equal to one another. If I multiply one side by c and the other side by c, it's going to be even. Why? Because my value c is exactly the same. Now, another way of thinking this is we're going to be doing the undoing. So if I am dividing right here. What's the opposite of division? It is multiplication. Now what am I going to be multiplying by? Remember, my goal is to get my x all by itself, so I'll be multiplying by whatever value m is. So if I multiply my values of m, do it on one side, do it on the other, what's going to happen? My m's are going to cancel out, they're going to turn into a big fat 1, and when I'm left with my 1x. Remember, that is my goal, getting x all by itself. So remember, whatever you multiply on one side, you've got to multiply on the other side as well. So go ahead and write down the directions. We're going to solve, and we're going to solve number 1, so make sure you have that in your notes. So, first off, what is our goal? That's my question. What's our goal? We have to get x all by itself. But we're taking a look. Is my x all by itself? No, it is not. So I'm taking a look. I have my x divided by negative 3. Remember, I have to undo division. How do I undo division? Through multiplication. Now the question is, what am I going to be multiplying by? You're going to multiply by whatever is in your denominator. So, since I have a negative 3, I've got to multiply this side by negative 3, this side by negative 3. Now technically, remember, I can put a 1 underneath it, and I can cross cancel. My negative 3's are going to cancel out. What am I left with? Just an x. I bring down my equal sign, and I take a look. What's 4 times a negative 3? It's going to give me a negative 12. Now we're looking, is x all by itself? Yes, it is. Since x is all by itself, this is going to be your answer. X is going to be equal to negative 12. Now let's go take a look at example number 2. Go and put that in your notes. Once again, I need to get m all by itself, but I have this pesky 5 that I need to get rid of. Well, how do I get rid of it? I need to undo division. What's the opposite of division? Multiplication. So, So, how am I going to get rid of it? Well, if I have a 5 in the denominator, if I multiply this by 5, technically I can put a 1 underneath it. I have to do the same to this side. Whoops, it's supposed to be a 5. Put a 1 underneath it. If I look, my 5's can cross cancel. What am I left with? Just with my m. So I have my m equal to, now what's negative 10 times 5? It's going to give me negative 50. And is m all by itself now? Yes, it is. Since it's all by itself, that means my answer is going to be negative 50. Now, go and write down number 3 and number 4 and go and try to solve them on your own. If you're at home and solving your own, you should have gotten y is equal to negative 32 and k is equal to 28. Those should have been your answers. So in your notes, I need the division property of equality as well as this sentence. Do not write down what is in the middle. So this property is just like every other property we've done so far. We have two numbers. They're equal to one another. If I divide on one side and divide on the other, I'm still going to have an equal equation because we're doing it evenly. I'm taking away C, also taking away C. Another way of looking at it is I'm multiplying. Well, how do I undo multiplication? Through division. So what I would do is, I need to get x all by itself. Well, how do I do that? By getting rid of my m. So if I divide m on one side, divide m on the other, my m's cancel out. I'm left with only an x, and that is what I was looking for. So whatever you divide by one side, you must divide by the other. We got to share equally. So in your notes, I want the directions solve as well as number 5. So taking a look at number 5, remember, what is our goal? Our goal is to get our x all by itself. But right now, I have that pesky -4. Now, how can I get rid of it? Well, right now, this is -4 times x. Or, something a little easier, -4 times x. And what's the opposite of multiplication? It is division. So what do I need to divide by? Well, I have to divide by whatever value is right here. So, I need to divide by -4 on one side, divide by -4 on the other. If I notice, my -4's are going to cancel out. What am I left with? Just my x, which I was looking for. I bring down my x, bring down my equal sign. Now let's see, what's 4 divided by 44 once, twice, so I get 11. But what did I forget? My negative. Never forget your triangle. It works for division. If I'm dividing by a positive and negative, negative will be your answer. So I'm going to have x is equal to a -11. That should be your answer. Now let's take a look at number 6. Looking at number 6, once again, it's -3 times d. What's the opposite of multiplication? Division. But what are we going to be dividing by? Well, I need to get d all by itself, so this -3 has to disappear. So I have to divide by -3 on one side, divide -3 on the other. These are going to cancel out. What am I left with? My d. Remember, my goal is to get it all by itself. Let's see. 3 divided by 4.2. Bring up my decimal. Once I get 12, 4 times. So I get equal to 1.4, but what did I forget? I forgot my negative, so it's a -1.4 as my answer. Now on your own, go write down number 7 and number 8 and go ahead and solve them. Now if you're solving this at home, you should have gotten x is equal to 9.6 and you should have gotten y is equal to -13. Now write me a 2-sentence summary of what we learned today. How do you undo multiplication? How do you undo division? Why do we need to know these properties of equality? How do they help us solve for the variable?